I'm making a second channel because I want to keep my main one just for vlogs, and I want to have a second one just for strictly business. For recap for myself, first of all, but then also for separate videos that will be, I guess, completely lesson focused. Over the last week, and not including today because it's Sunday, and the last week we've done, let's see, 17.2k in the last 7 days, business days, and which is phenomenal, and I'm grateful. But I'm not satisfied, simply because I know I'm not doing my best. Okay, like the business is performing, but I'm not doing necessarily what I know I need to do to get to the next level. Okay, one of the most common traits in successful people. No, okay, let me scratch that. The most common trait in successful people is self awareness and self reflection. It's them being able to understand where's their weak points, or it's them being able to understand where they lost a sale in a sales call, or it's them being able to understand, okay, why didn't my offer from my agency strike as well as it's supposed to be, or it's them understanding, okay, the psychology of humans, why this e-commerce product won't work or will work, or they predict it might work in the future. There's a lot of self-awareness that you need to have, and human awareness you need to have to be successful. And right now, one of my flaws that I can definitely say is a flaw of mine is focus. So I know, to give you some context on myself, was 18. I come from a small town in Ireland. Longford has a population of about 30,000 people. Money just, it's not a thing. Like you don't strive for money, for excellence. And I know I've always had this like loose screw in my head. I remember walking into my parents' office when I was like 11, and I'd look through like their envelopes to see like what the debt was, and I'd have that figure in my head to be like, I need to help that. I need to, at such a young age, and I always knew I was never going to college, etc. But what most entrepreneurs will find is we're often very scatterbrained. We have these ideas in our head that we want to be different, we just don't necessarily know how to execute on that. And for me, I've always been very, very good at just getting shit done, like quick. So I know a lot of you might be able to relate to this, but if a teacher gave you a project to do, I wouldn't do it, in the first 2 weeks she gives it to us. I do it in the last 24 hours, but I get it done. I put my head down, because I know that's the deadline and I have to do it. But what I find with entrepreneurship, where that doesn't, I guess, translate well, is the fact that, I'll have something to do, but there's not a necessary deadline for it. I just have to do it at some stage because it'll better my business. I kind of just find myself naturally pushing them back or not prioritizing when I know they should have a deadline. So focus. When I was 18, I focused very, very hard in this period because I knew I have a deadline. I'm 18, I'm not going to college. I need to get shit done in the next 4 years to prove to myself that my decision was right. And so I was in my work at the time, which was stacking pallets for 8 to 12 hours a day. 12 hours if you wanted to get overtime, for 450 euros a week. It was okay money. It was just relentless work. But the only benefit of that job was I got to wear headphones, and wearing headphones allowed me to self-educate myself a lot on sales. So I became obsessed with that. Got the seen Imran Gadzhi's story. He was hiring an SDR at the time. That was at the end of 2022, 2023. I began working with him at the start of 2023, and then I left Imran's team after going from SDR, which is appointment setter, to closer. And while I was doing closing, I was also in the top team meetings, which was talking about, I guess, future vision, managing, I guess, SDRs and other closers and performance of the company, etc. So I would have been at quite high levels within that company. Went on some amazing trips with Imran and the team. One of my greatest mentors in my life was Paul Daly. Go watch his YouTube if you don't. He has some excellent stuff. And I lived with Paul for a long time. I lived with Paul from 2023 in areas of that, 2024. I probably spent 9 months out of like 18 months with him in his house, side by side, day by day in the office. And I learned a lot of things, and he also taught me a lot of things about myself. He also pointed out a lot of flaws, but he was also quick to praise me on different things as well. But he knew I had thick skin. I remember on the first week of the company, he brought me into a Zoom meeting and he tore me apart for 20 minutes. He said, basically that he'd like to sack me, because of my ego at the time. And yeah, he basically just tore me apart and said, like, if it wasn't for these two guys at the time, the sales manager and the COO, who really, really liked me and seen potential in me, that he would have let go of me. And, I think that's good leadership. You have to point out someone's flaws. And if they aren't willing to take them and make themselves better because of that, then they aren't willing to learn. They aren't willing to self-reflect. And if they can't self-reflect, they're not going to learn fast. So, I took that quite well. And I think he always seen a bit of his younger self in me. And he knows I have thick skin, so the point is he wasn't afraid to point out when I did stuff wrong. And so one of the things he said I always wasn't good at was organization, was focus. And my mother has always said it to me also, like my mind's always in 1,000 different places at once because I just think so much and I have so many thoughts. And maybe it's my lack of, I have multiple flaws right now. I can't focus. So focusing regarding to sit down deep work hours, that's just not me. That's not my talent. My talent is connecting people, etc. So I lean on that. And a lesson, and a couple of lessons I want to give in this video. Well, one lesson is you should always lean on what you're good at first. And then once you've maximized that in that current situation, then fix the things that are your weakness, okay? I feel like too many people try, what's the word? They try to limit themselves where their strength is. So, for example, someone who has ADHD is very, very good at, outwardly going things or multitasking at once. And you don't necessarily have to, suppress that straight away. Try find ways to use ADHD as your advantage and become obsessed with learning different things or become obsessed with finding out little details, whatever it is. I don't have ADHD, I possibly do. I don't want to get checked for it because I don't want to be labeled. But what I'm trying to say is my strength was talking to people. My strength was yapping. My strength was connecting people. My strength was sales. So I leaned on that for a very, very long time. And that will get me so far. So that's got me to having a 17.2k week, one of my biggest weeks in business. And that's not revenue. That's straight profit. There's more on top of that. That's revenue. But I don't talk revenue. Revenue is bullshit. You have all these gurus out there talking to you about, I did $1 million a month in revenue, and then you realize they spend 600,000 on ads. They have a business partner, they have a sales team, they have CS, they have HR, and they end up taking home like 20 or 30,000, and they don't tell you that stuff. And that's a whole other conversation. But my main thing was sales and talking and connecting, and I realized that that's got me so far, and maybe it can even get me further. But in business, it's like a slingshot effect. Okay, there's times in business where you have to pull back, learn, or delegate, or self-reflect in order for you to go forward. So my main focus of this week coming is how do I regain my focus? So my issue right now is I can't read books. I never have read books. I've always, learned for myself or wanted to learn for myself or been in a good enough environment to ask the questions to the right people. But I don't think reading is necessarily about the education you get. It's about being able to calm your mind for your own thoughts. Okay, in an attention economy where there's billions of dollars from huge, gigantic corporations fighting for your attention every single second of the day, it's very, very important to be able to zone out and have your own thoughts. So that's what I need to be able to do. Then that will also be able for me to do deep work. Once I'm able to focus more and calm my mind, I feel like I can do deep work better. And when I have deep work better, I need to focus on different areas of my business at certain times. So this is a great tip for you and your business, okay? If you have a business, you should have blocks, okay? You should have blocks. So for example, if I take an onboarding call for my members club, okay? I'll have the onboarding calls on Wednesdays from 4 to 8 p.m, okay? 1 day a week, 1 set of hours a week. So they'll be back to back to back to back every single week, okay? But what does that allow me to do? It allows me to be in an onboarding headspace for a consistent back to back to back 2 to 3 to 4 hours, okay? So I don't have to switch between onboarding to sales to ops to e-commerce. I don't have to switch between mindsets. You're in one energy, you're in one frequency, and you're focused on that. Then let's say, for example, I'll talk about your guys' businesses. I'll talk about your guys' business, is the fact that if you have an agency, for example, you should spend X amount of your day, your morning time, focused on maybe deep work, tasks, operations, until your brain wakes up fully. Okay, so you spend the first 3 hours focused on one part of the business. You don't even want to hear about the other parts of the business. Then you come to midday, maybe that's when you take your sales calls. and then you come to evening. That's maybe when you have your team meetings. You need to block your days. If you find yourself going from this to this to this to this to this all within the same hour, you're doing it wrong, because nothing can get your full attention, and that's a flaw. And I noticed myself doing that, even though I'm very aware that I shouldn't. And I didn't do it for a very long time. I was very, very good at that, but I know it's sneaking back into me right now. So take that, okay? And what I'm trying to do right now, which you should all do, is I'm creating an ecosystem. Okay, so I have A players, this members club. Okay, what's the issue I'm trying to fix there? So I'm Irish. I was 18. I knew I had something different within myself, but I knew my environment that I was in wasn't good enough. Okay, so what's the first thing I did? I studied and I learned sales. And then I learned sales. I got the vehicle that I knew I wanted to get out of. Okay, so I have this vehicle. I know I need to make money this way. Made the money. Started making 2-3K a month. Minimal. Okay. Found my other friend. Brought him into the same business. Okay. We both started making 2-3K a month. What's the first thing we did? Bounced. Left the country. Went to Malta. Because I knew from the get-go that environment is everything. If you have an environment, and first of all, the weather is one thing. And the snow, the clouds, the rain, the lack of sunlight in general, it just depresses you and it doesn't motivate you. But also the environment regarding who you surround yourself on a day-to-day basis. A great line that I kind of came to my head the other day was, the same conversation at two different tables has two very different outcomes. And what that means is, if you go and have the conversations that you want to have with like someone like me or any of my friends in our house, and you go have that same conversation at the table at home where you're from, you're going to get a very less reciprocated response that you want to hear. So not only will you not get the response that you don't want to hear, which will be encouragement first of all, you also won't get inspiration. So you also won't get ideas bouncing off you. And that's what you need to grow. So environment also means people. It also means sunlight. It also means access to a network of people that you can meet on a day-to-day basis. And I knew that was so important from the get-go. So I wanted to fix the problem of, I hate being in a small town. I know you need to get out of there if you actually want to truly succeed and open your mind. It changes everything. You see wealth in a different way. And so, members club. Okay, let's bring in guys, European, 18, slightly younger if they're doing well, to 24, 25, who are stuck, are making money, know the vehicle they want to go with, know they're different than everybody else. Let's bring them to one area. Okay, and that's great. I'm not motivated by money, I'm motivated by purpose. So what that did then, sorry, my lovely girlfriend's calling me. Okay, so what I was saying was, I'm not motivated by money at all. I'm motivated by impact and purpose. So I capped what I could make per month with the members club. I don't want to milk that. I want to make it as powerful as possible. And to make a community and a membership as powerful as possible, you can't let in everybody. Because if you let in everybody, nobody knows each other, because no one has a chance to meet in a small volume. Because if there was 100 guys at a dinner, you can't talk to all of them. But if there's 10, 15, 20, you can talk to them and you can get to know them, you can shake their hand and you can network. And that's the purpose of that. But so I know I cap myself out here. I know there's a limit to that and regarding to impact, okay? So maximize that. Okay, but then what I also realize I have to do is, okay, I have a great brand, okay? That brand can also be an e-commerce company. Okay, so what I did was I partnered with a guy who knew more about me in e-commerce, okay? So now part of my day will be focusing on fulfillment. We'll be focusing on finding manufacturers. We'll be focusing on designs. We'll be focusing on team meetings with him and his team. And then there's also an angle of the APlayers branding agency. Okay, so what I'm trying to get across, I don't want to go into too much detail in regarding, so what I'm doing, I want to make it important to you, is that that's even within your agency. That's within your sales. That's within your life. You need to have an ecosystem. You can't just be reliant on one thing and one avenue, okay? As in, if you have an agency, you need to be omnipresent. What does omnipresent mean? You don't necessarily want to be the guy just doing the cold calls. You want to be able to attract in some way. Or even if you do the cold calls and they are successful, if they're coming to you, can they go on LinkedIn and watch 10 hours of your content? Can they go on your YouTube and know that you're an expert on what you're talking about? Can they go on your Instagram and see that you're well connected and been doing this for a long time? So what this means is, like, you want to, instead of chasing the butterfly around the garden, you need to sit in your own garden for a short time, and you need to be able to water your plants and just grow a beautiful garden and attract the butterflies to you. That's what we've done with APlayers. I spend $900 a month on ads, and we return 40,000 from organic referrals and just from people watching my organic content. And people will just say, send the link, I want to join. I know the impact it's going to make me. And it's like, that's what you can do for your life. and your business. If you just become omnipresent, you make it your mission known. You get around the right people with the right message. You become an expert on what you do. People will come towards you. Okay, so that goes for your agency, that goes for your sales. Just be omnipresent. You have to build a place to where if you even do cold call someone, which is like the quick way, you just start outreach straight away. Okay, well, how do you prove to them that you know what you're talking about? You don't have this content to back it up, which is very, very, very important. I watched a podcast with a guy called Rory Sutherland and Chris Williamson recently, and he talked about how people spend more on short-term advertising rather than long-term branding. And it stuck with me. I was literally in the middle of a 30k run, and that one line stuck with me the whole run. And it's so true. And I've noticed this from the very beginning of business. And that's why I've never cashed in. I've never gone crazy on creating content or reels or whatever it was. Because I knew if I did it then, it wouldn't be sustainable because I didn't actually know what the goal of it was. So I held back and I withheld myself. And I didn't want to say in my story, hey, we have 4 slots left this week. Pressuring people into things that, you're not concrete in yet. And what that means for you and your agency or your sales company, your e-commerce company is, yes, you can spend the quick buck now and you can try cash in on your audience now and you can spend loads of money on advertising, but realistically where the time needs to be spent, the time needs to be spent on yourself, needs to be spent on content creation, it needs to be spent on becoming omnipresent. And so what that means is you need to be creating more content. You need to be showing that you're an expert in what you do. Not just necessarily pumping ads, sales call. It's like, how can you create an ecosystem to where if they don't close, they can go and watch your content and they'll come back to you and close eventually. Or if they do book a call, do they have hours of content to watch before that call to become indoctrinated in what your process is? It's like you're wasting time doing the wrong things. If you want to last long, you need to build a brand. But if you want to go short and burn out, you'll end up just spending money and making short-term decisions. So I would say create your brand first. Become known for being a specialist in one area. Then over time, there's a consistent growth. With ad spend and with this front-end stuff, when you're not working on your back end or not building your brand strong enough, what that does is you'll have unpredictability because yes, you might have ads great one month, then your ad manager might come down, and then you might have better ads, but the creative might not work. Whatever it is, it's like this. You can't predict with ads, no matter what anyone says. It's like you can have all these fancy sheets if you want, but you never truly know. And like, okay, well, what can make it more accurate? If you actually just spend a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months building your brand and becoming known for something, and not necessarily spending too much on the front end, spending a good bit to where it's like maybe 1k a month, 2k a month, 3k a month, whatever it is that's affordable to you in your context. But then your main energy and focus is going on the brand, because what that does is naturally over time people will start to hear about you and refer you. And where you might start off with, instead of doing 100k a month, you might start off with 10, but then you go 10, 15, 25, 40. And what you're gaining here in that gap is trust and credibility, that your offer is actually what it says it is, that you can learn to fulfill over time, that you can learn to hire over time. And the downside of just going like this is like your offer isn't concrete enough. You don't know how to delegate. You don't know how to hire. You don't know that your offer is good enough. And it's like that creates distrust, destroys your reputation. People will talk bad. They won't refer. It does so much more damage to go like this in 6 months than it does to go like this over 2 years. And that's what you need to focus on. Focus on playing the long game, because what I see is a lot of these kids on Twitter will just post about their revenue right now, and what they won't realize is that in 5 years they're going to be absolutely broke because they're too focused on being rich now instead of wealthy later. And that's a big thing for me. I want to be wealthy later. I don't want to be rich now. I don't want to drive the fancy cars now. I don't want to have the nice watches now. I want to be I'm in this for the right reasons. I want to be an entrepreneur, not just get rich as a fucking kid. And if you're in this game and your main focus is the 10k a month goal, rather than actually being an actual purpose. So what's the why? What's the why? Well, not the figure. What's the why behind the figure? And that should be your main purpose and focus. Because if you actually want to sustain the why of your figure, you'll know that you have to make long-term decisions. So yeah, that's just a bit of context and what I feel like I need to do next upcoming week, and my reflection on this week is that I just need to be able to block out my days more efficiently, wake up in the morning and say, okay, this block's going to 2 hours of content, scripting, work towards my academy. The next block is going towards e-commerce. The next block is going towards, meetings with my team. The next block is going towards free thinking, self-education, etc. So it's in different blocks. And that can even go to an extreme towards even on different days. You might have different days for different tasks, and that's fine. But just make sure that you're not switching in between headspaces, because you won't be able to focus properly. But yeah, hopefully you find these sort of ones valuable. I'm not even going to edit them. I'm not going to put any subscribe things on them. I'm not going to make any cuts unless something happens, like my girlfriend calls me or whatever. But yeah, I really like self-reflecting. I think it allows me to get off my brain when I need to get off my brain and talk more, which I really enjoy doing the most rather than the vlogs. So if you find these valuable, let me know. And if you want me to talk on any particular topics in the future, always feel free to hit me a DM on Instagram, James Galligan, 2 N's. But yeah, we're on a mission. The odds are stacked against us. Realistically, like, we're not supposed to be here. Small town Ireland, no wealth or success around us. How are we supposed to do this? We're not, according to society. But once your environment changes and you realize the potential of yourself, the game starts to get a bit more fun, and that's what I'm making it. So yeah, DM me on Instagram, DM APlayers on Instagram also, if you want to know more about that. And until next week, amen.